Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Wedding Photo Podcast. Happy New Year. Excited to start the new year with the new season of the podcast. I can't believe we're going into season 3. This is so awesome. Like I never would have expected that the podcast would be where it is today. All the friends that I've made over the last 2 years, and it's just been an exciting thing to have this podcast and build this community, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without all of you. So thank you guys so much for continuing to listen and continue to share this podcast. Remember, if you guys want to reach out to me, you can find me on Instagram at Wedding Photo Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at DelToroPhoto, and you can also go join the Facebook group. All the links are in the show notes below. If you want to support this podcast, I would really love it if you left a review, left a 5-star rating. I think it helps the podcast grow and makes it more discoverable for others to find. And share the podcast. If you have some photographer friends that you think would enjoy listening to this podcast, send them over to the Wedding Photo Podcast. So like I said, we are excited for the new year. We're already off to a great start. You guys listened to the last episode. One of my resolutions was to blog more. We're already doing that. We're already blogging more. It's really exciting. We're really excited for all our upcoming weddings. We still have a little bit of a break. I don't think we have a wedding until March. So right now we're just busy working on our marketing for our Del Toro media, for our other businesses, and just marketing for wedding photography, getting all our blogs set up, and also enjoying the little break that we do get from wedding photography, because this year's going to be busy, and we're gonna have tons of fun. So we're looking forward to that. The first episode of the season. I'm excited. I'm really excited for this one, guys. Speaking of blogging, we had Narrative reach out to us, and prior to them reaching out, I think I had conversations about Narrative with Eric McFarland, but I never really looked into it. They are a company that has software that is used to help photographers and just bloggers in general help make blogging more efficient and easier and quicker to use. I know I've always struggled. I've talked about it on here. I've always struggled with getting our blogs up and running, and they reached out to me and wanted me to give it a try. I did. I couldn't believe how quick and easy it was to put blogs on there together. There's a ton of features that they have that are super helpful, especially if you really don't know where to start or where to go. Like SEO is always a big question for everybody. They have some solutions on there for marketing, as far as uploading your photos and moving them around and putting them where you want them and resizing them. Like, they make all that stuff easy. And that's what we're talking about on the episode today. On this episode today, I have New Zealand wedding photographer and co-founder of Narrative, James Broadbent, on to talk about how he got his start as a wedding photographer, how he built his business up. We talk about the importance of blogging, and of course we talk about Narrative, and he gives us all the details that you need to know about Narrative. And him and his team were also kind enough to share with us a little discount if you did decide that you want to go and give Narrative a try. You can go over to narrative.so. Try it for free, and if you like it, we got a discount code in the show notes for you to use so you can get started in doing all your blogging. So I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited to have the first guest of the season, of the third season of the Wedding Photo Podcast. So without further ado, I present to you James Broadbent. James, thanks for being on the podcast. I really appreciate having you on, man.
Of course, it's great to be here.
I understand you guys are in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, based in Auckland, New Zealand. Possibly not the most beautiful part of New Zealand, but it's where most people actually live. So we don't all live in mountains and lakes.
I was about to say, what's it like living in and photographing in the most beautiful place in the world?
Yeah. I mean, we spend a lot of time shooting, like down in the South Island and so forth. And there's amazing places you can drive to from here. But yeah, I mean, we just live in another city, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like California, right? Everyone kind of either thinks we live like in Los Angeles or in Palm Springs, but there's so many more cities in between.
Yeah, totally.
I want people to if they don't know who you are, I want to get a little bit of background about you. So why don't we start with that? Give us a little bit of background about who you are and how you got started as a photographer.
Yeah. Okay. So, as a photographer, where do I start?
Go way back.
The first camera I remember using was a disposable film camera.
Nice.
My folks used to buy me cameras when I was young. I don't know why, because they had no interest in photography. But I used to just like walk around and take photos of like our house and selfies of me in the mirror. I'm sure I shot the first selfie. I know lots of other people would like to claim that they did, but it's probably me. Really oddly, there was like a photography competition in our school, and I think I was like 12 years old, and we were given just really basic cameras for a week to go out and shoot. And somehow I took this photo of a building that was one of the winning prizes. Yeah. And I was like 12 years old and I'd never really taken a photo before aside from my selfies in the mirror. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, and it's interesting. And that was kind of that. I didn't really continue to pursue photography for years after that. I didn't study photography in high school. I didn't study photography anywhere, in fact. And in 2008, I did this trip where I traveled from India to Europe overland, and it took me about 6 months. And I wanted to document the process, and because I knew I was going to, I guess, encounter a whole lot of beautiful locations and people. And so I wanted to create a blog, and this is when Tumblr was really big. And so I was like, I'm going to make a Tumblr and it's going to be huge. And so I bought a Canon 6D and a 50L. For some reason, I don't know why I bought the 50L. I think I asked one of my friends who was a photographer, and I was like, what's your favorite lens? And he was like, oh, it's this prime. And it's really awesome. And I was like, okay, I'm going to buy that. And so 50 is like the worst lens to travel with, as like, because you can't shoot wides, and it's good for portraits, but like it's not quite I mean, it is a portrait lens, but it's nothing like 85 or something like that. So, but it was actually probably one of the best lessons for me, because it taught me to move my feet. And I was constantly trying to work out, like, okay, I'm trying to tell the story about like this market or these mountains or this scene or something like that. And I had to actually really think about it, like, where do I need to stand to capture that photo? And how can I frame that? And obviously I was shooting the whole thing on prime. And so, I learned to move my feet, which I think was a really, really important lesson early on as a photographer. And I was traveling on my own, so I'd pretty much just shoot all day and then spend every evening trying to work out how to use Lightroom, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I made a Tumblr blog, as I said, and some people followed it, and
it blew up, and that's how you got your start.
I don't think it blew up. No, not at all. In fact, in hindsight, I'm like, damn it, I wish I did that on Instagram, because it might have actually got a little bit more traction. I mean, I think one of my, because on Tumblr you can reshare the photos. One of my photos was reshared like 100,000 times, but that doesn't mean anything, because unless they actually like click through and follow.
Hey, in 2008, that was a pretty big deal.
And someone saw that blog, one of my friends from home, and he was like, hey, we're getting married, would you photograph our wedding? And I knew a few people who were wedding photographers, and I always thought it was like quite interesting, because you get paid like a huge amount of money to turn up for one day and take some photos. And I thought that's what wedding photography was. And I was like, man, I'd love to do that. Like rock up to like some party for a day and get paid a few $1,000s and then just go home. Like, how sweet does that sound?
Sounds easy, huh?
And he was like, yeah, super easy. And he was like, cool, how much do you charge? And I said to him, oh, my prices start at $2,000 for a day.
He signed right away.
And he paid me $2,000 to photograph my first ever wedding.
Oh man, that's awesome.
I don't know. I think it was, I don't know, like, I think maybe someone had said to me once, like, if you're ever going to get into weddings, don't charge a small amount, because once you're charging small amounts, it's really hard to get out of that. Yeah. Because you kind of get stuck in this rut of budget clients, and you really, like, early on, what do you need? You need a good portfolio. And what kind of weddings have, make your portfolio look good? They're ones where people have spent, money on making it look beautiful, because I mean, that's often what people are looking for. And so from there, I just returned from this the 6-month trip overseas, and like, I guess that was kind of the end of the financial crisis, and so I had no idea what I was going to do for work, and I was like, maybe I can just be a wedding photographer. So I made a little website, put some photos up, and just started sharing it across my social media, and within a month I had booked 5 more weddings, and they were all within the next 6 months. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, I guess I'm a wedding photographer now. And so it kind of sounds ridiculous, but the day I shot my first wedding was the day I became a full-time wedding photographer, because I didn't have any other work. And that's all I did. I moved in with my folks, and I just spent all day, every day, trying to work out how to do this wedding photographer thing. I was like watching videos on YouTube. I was trying to work out how to set up like a website, my portfolio, and like establish pricing packages, and work out how to like deliver these images and edit them. And I had the time to do that because I wasn't doing anything else. And shot those 6 weddings over the coming 6 or so months. And then I remember the wedding. So the first wedding was in January. The wedding that I shot that June, there was so many flukes about that wedding, but it was like a DIY wedding. They did all these really unique things. Like the bride just smiled the whole day, and then these wild horses turned up on our photo shoot that was happening at sunset time. It was a winter wedding. And then like we had these horses like running across the back of our photos as they were just like cracking up and laughing, and like I don't know, it was ridiculous. And it got published in one of the magazines here in New Zealand. And from then on in, it kind of just steamrolled for me, I guess you'd say. And from that June to the following June, I ended up shooting 40 weddings. So it was a little bit of a baptism by fire, in the sense that I was like, I don't know if this is a good idea, but I'm going to do it, because what better way is there to kind of, I guess, get into an industry than to just go 1,000% into it. And yeah, when we speak at our workshops, I don't like telling this story, because I think it feels quite discouraging for the people who are sitting in the audience, because they're like, well, I've been doing this for 6 months, and like I haven't been published, and like I didn't book 40 weddings in my first year or whatever. And I mean, I guess we all just have different ways that we enter into the wedding photography industry, and there were so many flukes for me, and like getting those early that early wedding published. During that time, Facebook was really promoting businesses. So I was like, I had maybe like a few hundred followers on my Facebook page, but I was getting thousands of people viewing my photos, and so Facebook was driving all of my leads. Facebook ads were really effective, so I was running Facebook ads, and and so that pretty quickly grew into what is now known as Chase Wild. Cam and I, who were good friends, we studied at university together, had both got into photography about the same time, and we were both independently had started shooting weddings, and we were just like teaching each other everything we knew. We were like, man, I worked out like a really awesome way to do dance photos, or I worked out like an awesome way to do this. And we would just like catch up every week and tell each other what we'd learned. And then after a while we were like, why don't we just do this together?
Yeah.
Like,
was he new to it too? Just like you?
Yeah. We had studied together, and this is before I did that big trip. And there's this thing that had just come out during that time called Instagram. And at the time it was only available on iPhones, and we had iPhones, and we thought we were like super cool because we had like this new app that had come out, and we used to go out in the weekend and like take photos and post them to Instagram. And that was kind of like how our friendship bonded, which was super fun.
Yeah.
And that naturally progressed into us going, well, what if we like took photos? You know, I mean, maybe that's where that initial interest of me wanting to get that that Canon 6D and actually get a little bit more serious about photography came out of.
Yeah. And how did you guys like end up splitting up the workload? Was one of you doing the editing, or how did that go about?
Yeah. So I think we'd both been shooting weddings for about a year at the time that we decided to join. And what we'd worked out was the thing that was awesome about wedding photography was shooting the weddings. And the thing that sucked was like running a website, running a social media, running a business, replying to emails, promoting your brand, all of that side of things. And we figured, hey, if we join together, then we only have to do half as much of that because there's one brand. And so, but we also, I guess, identified that if we shot the weddings together, then we'd be making half as much money. So it didn't really make sense to join and both shoot together. We do sometimes shoot together, but 99% of the weddings we're photographing, it's either Cam or myself. So how do we divide it? We just split them as they come in. Like we literally just alternate. And so he takes one and I take one. And if the person comes through and says, oh, you know, you shot my cousin's wedding and I loved the photos, then we work out who it was that shot that wedding. And then that person will take that booking. Otherwise, we just alternate. Yeah.
And then each of you were just editing your own weddings too? Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, literally everything that either of us would learn, we would teach it to the other person. And because we went from complete amateurs to, I guess, shooting weddings full time at the same time and taught each other everything we knew, that ended up in us establishing almost identical styles in the way that we shoot and edit. And yeah, I mean, if someone it really happened, but if a person ever said to us, you know, like, do I get to pick who I want? Then I would say, yeah, sure. I mean, you can pick, but if you look on the website, you're not going to be able to tell who shot which one. Yeah. Like, you're not going to be able to work out that this is even shot by two different kind of photographers. Yeah. So, I mean, you can pick a wedding and say you want the photographer from that one. Like, that's fine. Now we have an editor who works for us. She works from our office, and so we have the same person editing both of our work now, which works really well as well.
That's awesome that you guys had like each other to fall back on and you know, basically bring each other up like that. That's pretty cool. I know when I first started, I worked at a job where I worked at a photo studio, and I was surrounded by a ton of different photographers, different genres, different categories. But it was really great because when I was, you know, starting my business, I was able to ask them questions about how they would handle certain situations, and I would get all this feedback from different people and kind of build my own thing. So I think, you know, having someone that you can like ask about if you're doing something right or wrong is pretty great, you know?
Yeah. And now there's so many like Facebook groups, like your Facebook group, where like it's awesome to have a space to reach out to people and ask questions. But that community wasn't quite there when we started. And so, yeah, it was super helpful to have someone even just to like bounce ideas off.
Yeah.
And I think we were incredibly fortunate that we just worked well together. We're at a similar stage. And there was a time where we got like super frustrated at each other one year and we almost split the business. And then someone convinced us that it'd be better if we didn't. And so we didn't. So it's like, it's not always smooth sailing, but it's been really, really awesome for us. And I'm super stoked that we've been able to build this company together. Yeah.
It's like it's a real relationship. I'm glad you guys were able to work things out.
yeah. We had some counseling, and I had to apologize.
Oh man!
No, I'm joking.
So you were the cause. No, just kidding. Oh man, that's awesome. So you guys have like an editor now. Do you guys also have associate shooters, or is it just you guys going out and shooting all the weddings?
Yeah, so Chase Wild is just us.
Yeah.
We do actually have another brand. It's called The Isles. You can Google it and have a look. This is pretty much exclusively run by Cam, but we get like 1,000 inquiries a year, and we quite quickly realize that, I mean, we're shooting like 20 each. So we're turning away 960 inquiries a year, either because we're unavailable or because we're too expensive.
Yeah.
And we're driving so many leads to our website. We're like, it just doesn't really make sense to be losing like so many of these opportunities.
Yeah.
So we made a new brand, which is at a lower price point, and we have trained up other photographers who shoot for that brand. And if we're unavailable or out of the price range for the person who's inquiring, then we refer them to the other brand. And yeah, they're photographers who are trained by us. And so the work is pretty similar. Yeah. And then the same editor who's editing our weddings is also editing the weddings for the Isles.
Smart. That's good. That sounds awesome. Now, have you guys always been based out of New Zealand? Is that where you guys started? And do you guys solely just shoot in New Zealand? Because I've seen you guys do a lot of traveling too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
just think a little bit.
Weddings in maybe 16 different countries.
Oh man.
So from the outset, we kind of just decided, I mean, we were young. We're now like early mid 20s, and we were like, we want to travel. We want to shoot people all over the world. And so we kind of established very early on that we wanted to have an international brand.
Yeah.
And so we actually, to do that and to establish those relationships overseas, we decided that we were going to start this, we decided that we were going to write stories about the most influential photographers around the world. And so we planned this trip where we traveled through America and Europe, and we were going to get in touch with people we really looked up to and just say, hey, we're writing stories about the people behind the cameras. Can we write a story about you? And we'd come and like knock on the door of, like, at the time, like, you know, Jonas Peterson, he was like the biggest name in the industry, and we like went over and visited him and got to know him, and like and a whole bunch of other photographers who are now like good friends of ours because we got to go hang out with them and just talk to them about them and their life, and we like wrote stories about them and shared them. And it just so happened that those relationships that we built with those photographers turned into like awesome friendships where they would refer us work and we would refer them work in New Zealand and so forth. And so we were able to quite quickly shoot quite a large amount of international work. So I'm not traveling nearly as much as I was because obviously I now run narrative, but we were sort of on the road for 4 to 5 months of the year each year during our peak, you might say.
Yeah.
Spending most of our time up and around and near Europe and thereabouts. Fun fact, if you Google Faroe Island wedding photographer, we show up as number 1. So have photographed quite a few weddings in the Faroe Islands.
Nice.
I haven't checked that recently. It might have shifted, but and so I guess we can talk about this more when we talk about narrative, but we quite quickly will realize the benefit of SEO and blogging, and especially as Facebook started to teeter off and wasn't as strong as a way to generate leads, and we sort of identified, look, the same thing's going to happen to Instagram one day as well, right? Like, it's pretty soon that Instagram's going to start to push down businesses and start to lift up your personal profiles, and so we need to be able to generate our own leads and not be reliant on this other external company to be able to do that. And so having a strong blog and awesome SEO is what does that. Yeah.
So I did want to talk about that. When you guys first started Chase Wild, started, getting more inquiries, what did you guys do? Excuse me. What did you guys do to build like clientele? What kinds of resources did you guys have at the time?
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier, like at the time, Facebook ads were really, really efficient.
Yeah.
And I don't think many wedding photographers had quite cottoned on to the fact that, and they actually still are. I mean, we were paying like 20 cents to get an engaged woman on our website who's based in our city. Like, that's ridiculous. That's so cheap. And then, how many of them do you need to land on your website until you get an inquiry, and how many of them do you need to inquire until you get a booking? Like, you work out the unit economics of that, and it's free money basically. I think you pay a little bit more now, but it's still pretty good. As opposed to like Google, you pay like $5 to get somebody onto your website, and you don't even know if they're engaged. And so like, it could just be another photographer you're paying to have to get them on. Now, almost all of our work comes through referrals from weddings we've already photographed, or through SEO in our blog, and we've worked really hard to build a really strong blog that, as I said, I mean, we rank really well for a whole bunch of locations and venues, and then just generally in Google image search, we make sure that all the images from our blogs also rank for different keywords that couples might be searching for leading up to their wedding. And so that's where most of our, I guess, lead generation comes from at this stage. You
attribute that all to like your blogging and SEO. So it sounds like you guys were early adapters of a lot of these things like Instagram, Facebook, because I do remember them being around. I was an Android user when Instagram first came out. I remember having to wait for it to come out, and I had friends that had iPhones, and they were already on Instagram. They were bragging about it, and I remember talking. My friend Eric, who's on here quite often, he was an early adapter as well, and we always joke because I used to give him a lot of crap about Instagram, and then as soon as it came onto Android, I mean, I was hooked. So you guys started blogging. How did the idea for a narrative come about?
So maybe we should just sort of share what narrative is, in case anyone hasn't heard of it. Narrative is an app that you install on your computer, which allows you to build image-heavy blog posts really quickly. It allows you to create beautiful layouts, as the name suggests, to tell a story, and publish that directly to your existing website, if that's WordPress or Squarespace or whatever. And the process of building a blog post was always such a big pain point for me. It used to take me a day to build a blog post because I'm so meticulous about the process, because I want to make sure the SEO is right, because I want to like really allow that story to unfold. I would spend a lot of time jumping back into Lightroom, re-editing images so that they look good alongside where they're sitting in that story. And it just felt like, hey, this is way more painful than it needs to be. Like, before narrative, if you wanted two images side by side, you had to stitch them together in like some other platform and then upload them. And then if you realize that, oh, I want to re-edit one of them, you've got to go back to Lightroom, re-edit it, stitch it back together, delete the old one off the website, re-upload the new one, then reposition it. And I was like, we can solve this problem like super easy. So with narrative, if you want to re-edit an image, you just re-edit it into Lightroom, export it again, and then it just overwrites in the existing image in the blog post. I wanted to be able to build blog posts offline because I was traveling a lot. I was on airplanes. I was in hotel rooms that had really bad Wi-Fi, and so I was like, we need a platform that works without the internet. I guess I also just felt like everyone's blogs looked exactly the same. And so when we started to think about what we could create if we were going to build a platform which would allow people to build blogs, we were like, we want to make something that people can start to have a whole lot more freedom in the way that they design. And so we wanted people to be able to work with negative space, to create beautiful layouts on their blogs. And I think the reason why all of this is important is because your blog is your website and your blog, they're the most purest form of your portfolio. If someone's thinking about booking you, they're looking at your website and they're looking at the blog posts of what you've created. And so, yeah, it's one of the most important parts of sharing your work and generating new leads. Yeah.
I love what you said about how long it used to take you. I mean, I was telling you earlier, narrative couldn't come at a better time for us. My wife she does all our editing, and she was the one building all our blogs, and they would take forever. And, it would take us, like a whole day to do it. It was a pain. We had to upload every single photo. That, for some reason, took time no matter how small our files were. And then we had to go into the settings for each photo and choose all these different things that we wanted. And all we wanted to do was just kind of drop them all in and move them around. And I was telling you that, prior to narrative, we hadn't blogged in over a year. In fact, on my last episode, I talked about New Year's resolutions. And last year I did a New Year's resolution episode, and my resolution was to blog more, and I never blogged I never blogged once. And I started using narrative, and in one day I had like 5 blogs ready, and right now we have blogs ready to go out once or twice a week for the next couple months. Like it's so easy, man.
That's epic. How long have you been using it now?
Maybe a month.
That makes me so happy. I mean, like, that's why we created narrative, right? And there's so many awesome success stories from our users as well. I think if you go to our website, and you go /SEO, there's a bunch of like testimonials from people talking about how with using the SEO features in narrative, they've been able to get like more bookings. Their posts are finally showing at the first page or the top of Google, and people are like, I booked my first international booking or whatever. And it's so cool to see that as someone who kind of imagined how blogging could be better, and and have been able to do that and give that to people.
It really did work. And when it comes to things that work, like I tend to become like a nerd over it, right? So like I got so excited about it that like we went on vacation, and one morning that I wake up earlier than most of my family. So one morning I would wake up and I was excited just to open it up again, and I put together like 2 or 3 blogs. And then when we got back from vacation, before I start my day, I'll like, I want to put a blog together real quick just because it's so easy to do it. It was kind of like, it was fun. I was looking forward to put them together, Now I've slowed down because I got most of them ready to go.
So I actually, since using narrative, I now make a blog post for every single couple that I shoot with. And like a lot of photographers will send through a sneak peek, like a small selection of images after the wedding. The Monday after the wedding, when I get back to my office, I edit 20 images and I make a small blog post, and I get all of that SEO stuff in there. So I get like locations, get keywords on all of the images, and obviously the couple's name and so forth.
Yeah.
And then I share that with them. And it's just like additional opportunities for you to rank well in Google.
Yeah.
And sometimes people even just go, oh, who was like the photographer for Sam and Jane? And so they just Google that, and it's going to be the first thing that shows up now. And there's a really nice, like very small curated blog post. And even if the wedding, like the whole day didn't work out perfectly, and you're like, this wouldn't be like a feature piece for me, you're putting in like the best 20 images. It's going to look awesome.
Yeah.
They don't link from our homepage. They're all unlinked pages, but they all rank really well in Google as well. And so it's awesome to be able to just quickly throw them together as well.
So let's talk about some of like the key features on Narrative. If you want to run us through some of like the main things with Narrative.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So, I guess I talked about how you can create unique layouts. You can work with negative space. It's super easy to just drag and drop to put images side by side, and side by side images are actually two separate images. They're not stitched together. So Narrative builds the HTML for that blog post, and that gets loaded into your website. So for those images that sit side by side, if you have like a Pinterest button on them, they can actually pin one of them. Or when they show in Google image search, sometimes you see like two stitched images from someone who doesn't use Narrative in that Google image search, and it looks super weird. Like each actual image is an individual image, and that shows up there. Yeah. Obviously, you can build blog posts way faster. Most of our users say that they build a blog post in 5 to 10 minutes. Narrative gives you feedback on the SEO of your blog post. And so we use a really simple traffic light system, which is just red light, this thing you can do way better, and this is how. Orange light, this is good, but it could be a little bit better. And green light, you've done really well with this part of your SEO, and we'll break it down based off each of the elements that you can improve. You can quickly and easily add image keywords and alt tags to every single image in the blog post. So you can click on any single image, and on the right-hand side, add a keyword to that. So maybe like the name of the venue or the location or the name of the dress or something like that. And you just use the tab key, and you can just tab through every single image and add keywords to each of them. Or you can select a group of images and just add the same keywords to a group if you want to do it that way. We do a whole lot to ensure that your blog posts load really quickly on your website. People love putting massive amounts of images in blog posts, which is awesome, but Google hates that. A slow loading page will not load fast on Google. Yeah. So when you publish with Narrative, we resize all of the images to 5 different image sizes. So regardless of what device the user is visiting your website on, it will load the perfect size image to ensure it loads really fast. It uses really smart lazy loading. So what it's going to load, it's only going to load what's on the screen, plus it loads 2,000 pixels of what's about to enter the screen. So as you scroll through a Narrative post, like the initial page is going to load in a split second, and then as you scroll down, it will start loading what's about to enter the page. Yeah. And we do all the resizing and so forth for you when you publish, so you don't need to worry about like how much should I be compressing the images, or what width should they be, or any of that kind of stuff. You just load in images straight out of Lightroom, and we take care of that for you as well. I mentioned this earlier, but if you re-edit an image in Lightroom, you just overwrite the original file, and it's automatically updated in Narrative. One of the things that we really struggled with early on was that we were with one website platform, and we spent a lot of time thinking about how we wanted to move to another, but all of our blog posts were stuck in that platform, and that's like the largest part of your website. So we were like, okay, if we move to another platform, then we're going to have to rebuild all of these. But when you have your blog post created in narrative, it gives you the freedom to move from any platform. If you want to move from Squarespace to WordPress, like you can just republish all of those blog posts again on your new Squarespace account. So that's makes it super easy.
Yeah.
I mentioned you can work offline. You can easily add Pinterest buttons. We have a magic wand where you can click this button and it designs a blog post for you, and it just puts all of the images into the post. We've recently added a feature called animation. So as a user scrolls through the website, the images really nicely fade in as they appear on the screen.
I love that feature.
Yeah, it just makes it feel a little bit more professional, right?
Yeah.
And it makes your blog post stand out a little bit more.
I kind of wish that every website I go to now, I wish it would just load that way. It feels so much smoother.
Totally, yeah. And we also recently introduced another feature called Lightbox, where you can click on any image in a narrative post, obviously if you turn this feature on, and it will go full screen. And the reason why we created this is because I saw people looking at blog posts like on their phone, and I would see them like trying to pinch into these like small images to try and see what was in it. And I was like, man, wouldn't it be awesome if you could just click on any image in a blog post and it would just go full screen?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh wait, we can do that. So we've created that as a feature as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously, yeah. So, I mean, I could keep going, but that's kind of a small intro into some of the killer features in narrative.
It seems like you guys have like thought a lot of it through. Like, what's your team look like over at Narrative?
There's 10 of us here now.
Nice.
We're all based here in Auckland. We have a support person based in Barcelona, just so that we can try and get coverage from a few more hours of the day, because it turns out New Zealand is not the best time zone to be based for customer support. So there's a little chat box on our website you can jump on if you have questions or you know, having trouble with anything. There'll be someone on the other end of the line to help you out. Most of our team are photographers who either have come out of doing weddings or just love photography, which is awesome. I think Rebecca, who you were speaking to earlier, she's also a wedding photographer herself. Yeah. And so I think I wanted to create a team of photographers because that's why we exist, right? Yeah. Like the purpose of narrative is to give photographers back more time doing what they love, and that's being behind the camera, not being at your computer. Yeah. And
you know, some of my favorite features on this since I've been using it is I really love how integrated everything is. I mean, you've talked about all the, you know, most of the new features that you have, like the light box and everything. Those are things that you know, without even really thinking about it, those are the things people really want to be able to use. You want to be able to just go on there on your phone, click the photo, swipe through them. You want everything to just be super smooth, and you guys have thought that through. I love the automatic syncing. I use the app on the desktop to build all my posts, and it's already happened a few times where you know halfway through a blog I'm like, you know what, I don't really like the way that photo flows with that other one, so I can literally just go back in the app, switch out the photo, hit sync, and that's it. I don't have to go and copy paste, do anything else to it. It just automatically syncs up. And I just love how quick it is. Super easy to post, and the SEO feature, I think that's really great. You know, SEO comes up a lot because I feel like people really don't understand SEO, and that's myself included, right? Like that's such a huge question when you look up YouTube videos and all this stuff on the internet. Like there's so many questions about SEO. I feel like no one really understands it. So I think it's great that you guys have made it at least. Maybe it's still not easy to understand, but at least you guys have these built-in, things that make it a little easier to help you with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can talk about how that works. So, Narrative will ask you what your focus keywords are, and so that is, what do you want to rank for in Google? Like, what is, if you could pick one, and this is the best strategy when it comes to doing SEO for a blog post. Like, if you could pick one term that you wanted to rank for, what would it be? And so maybe it's the name of the venue, or maybe it's the location, or maybe it's the kind of wedding, like warehouse wedding or something like that. And so once you've put in your focus keywords, Narrative will start giving you feedback on your whole blog. Like, this is how you could change your title. This is how you could change your body text. This is how you could change the metadata on the images and so forth, just to help ensure that you're actually going to rank for those focus keywords in Google. And I think there's a real art in picking those focus keywords. I mean, that's one thing that Narrative can't do, but I can help you there. Like, when it comes to picking focus keywords, it's really important to focus on terms that you think other people won't necessarily have, are not also trying to rank for, and that's where you get the biggest wins. So what I'm saying is, you might think, okay, we're based in Auckland, so we should be trying to rank for Auckland wedding photographer. But every single photographer is trying to rank for Auckland wedding photographer. So that's not going to be my focus keywords for most of the blog posts that I have on my website. I'm gonna go after the name of the venue. I mean, as I said, the type of wedding that it was, the specific location. Like, there's this island off Auckland called Waiheke. Maybe I'm going to try rank for that. I'm going to think about the things that, like, people are not necessarily, not everyone is trying to rank for, and those less frequently used terms are much easier to rank for. Yeah. So if you have, 20 blog posts, 30 blog posts that all rank for slightly less common terms, then you're going to be like number one for all of them. So I gave that example, warehouse wedding, and I'm pretty sure if you search warehouse wedding Auckland, let me just check before I say this. Yeah, we're number one, right? Warehouse wedding Auckland. And because how many people decided that they were going to try and pick that as a focus keyword?
Yeah.
Not many, but actually that's something that heaps of brides and grooms are going to be searching before a wedding, if that's something that they might be interested in. So we made sure that that's like in the title, that it's in the blog post, that it's in the alt text, that it's in the alt tags for the images and so forth. And Narrative helps you ensure that you do that.
Yeah. I think that's going to help photographers a lot. I mean, it's already, I was already kind of integrating some of those things, but like I said, it's all in the app. It's all in the software. It just makes it so much easier to use. James, I love that your whole career, this whole thing started from wanting to start a Tumblr blog. And now you're running a business that is just based on helping people build their blogs.
Yeah. I guess I never really thought about that.
I love that, man.
And what happened to Tumblr? Man, they're owned by Flickr now. Oh, wait, something like that. Yahoo bought them, and then someone else bought them. Yeah.
So tell us what's next for Chase Wild? What's next for Narrative? What do you got plans for?
Yeah. Nowadays I shoot about 5 weddings a year. Narrative is my full-time job now, essentially, and for interesting weddings that come up, photograph them. So a couple of weekends ago I was photographing one of the All Blacks weddings. If I get a few interesting destination weddings, then I'll take them on board. But most of my time is put towards Narrative. It's like I still absolutely love shooting weddings, and I'll always be a wedding photographer. And I think it's really important for me to keep my finger on the pulse as someone who builds software for photographers. But yeah, we're working on a few more things at the moment. We'll be announcing a new product in Feb next month. So keep your eyes peeled.
Awesome.
I'll give you I'll give you a little bit of a clue, but it's in the space of image selection and culling, which is something that's always sucked. And we're bringing some massive changes to that. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
You can tell me after we stop recording. I won't tell anybody. You can tell me.
Yeah, there's some pretty exciting stuff going on. I guess I'd say watch this space. Yeah. And you'll see what comes along.
That's awesome, man. I want to thank you and your team for hooking up our listeners too. I think you guys were able to give us a little discount for Narrative, which I'm going to share in the show notes. I'll have the link and the discount code and everything. But I want to thank you guys. You guys have a really amazing product, and from everyone I've talked to, you and your team, everyone's been so great. You guys are all so genuine, and that's why I wanted to have you on and talk to you, because I love what you guys are doing.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's great to chat.
Before I leave you, I want you to give I want you to share just a little bit of advice that you might give to photographers looking to start their own business as wedding photographers, or maybe even more specifically, destination wedding photographers.
Yeah. So I guess I touched on this earlier, but early on, it's really important to focus on just establishing your portfolio, right? So what helps you get bookings? It's a beautiful portfolio. And people would often say to me like, I'm trying to generate some income. And so I'm giving this person a discount, and, at least it's not a lot of money, but at least it's some money. And I would always say to them, is that booking going to improve your portfolio? Is that going to get you your next booking? And they would say, it's not really that great. And I would say, that's not worth giving you it's not worth giving them a discount, because you don't get anything from that. Like your most important focus when you're early and you're not getting the kind of bookings you want is to create content like the kind of bookings you want. And so you need to do whatever it is to get that on your website. When a bride is looking through photographers' websites to see their work, they're not actually looking at how good your photography is or what your skills are. They're actually just looking at the photos and how the subject or the wedding looks, and asking themselves, do I want a wedding that looks like that? And that's all subconscious, right? So if they're having like a $200,000 wedding, at some like amazing location with like a $20,000 installation of florals, and you don't have anything on your website that looks like that, then they're not going to book you. Or if they want to get married like on top of a mountain, which they flew to in a helicopter, and do some like crazy adventure, and you don't have anything on your website like that, you're not going to book anything like that. So getting the portfolio pieces in your website of the kind of work that you want to do is the most important thing. And so for us, like what that looked like is like I remember one of the first elopement inquiries we had was this couple coming from Germany to elope in New Zealand, and they were like, we want to get married at this beach in the Coromandel, like it's this white sand beach, and we want to kind of do this and do that. And I emailed back and I was like, yeah, cool, we can do that. I've actually got this other idea that I've really been wanting to do. Like, would you be interested in getting married in one of the deserts in the center of New Zealand, which is like a desert and a mountain and like this crazy location? And they were like, yeah, sure. And I was like, awesome. Like, I'll plan all of it. You just got to turn up to Auckland. We'll drive down. We'll do the elopement. I'll organize like the celebrant. I'll make some suggestions for the florist and hair and makeup. And that was like one of our first like super crazy outdoor, like out there in the middle of nowhere elopements. And that led on to a whole set of couples who flew to New Zealand for us to take them out into the middle of nowhere into some crazy locations. But you've got to make it happen. And it's worth giving a discount or even doing something for free if it's going to like expand your portfolio in the way that you need it to. Yeah. But that's only the case that you would do that for. And if you need to like call up one of your mates and be like, man, I know you guys got married 2 years ago, but like, I really want to get some photos that look like this. Could you put your wedding dress on again so that I can kind of get that kind of content? Then, you've got to do that. Yeah. When we traveled around the world and we met our favorite photographers or the most influential photographers that we knew, I kind of remember having a lasting thought at the end of that trip. And it was that there was one thing that was consistent across all of those photographers, and it was that they all worked really hard. They all were really passionate about what they did, and they were relentless in their processes. And so, they weren't the kind of people who were trying to do photography as a side gig. They were waking up thinking about their photography and their business, and they were going to sleep thinking about it. And not everyone has the time and the emotional energy to do that. And I think you can run a successful wedding photography business without committing that much to it. But I think it's helpful to know that, like, yeah, that's what it looked like for us, and I think that's what it looks like for a lot of the people that you really look up to. Yeah,
I love it. Be passionate and be relentless.
Yeah, totally.
Well, you have an impressive portfolio, James. Your work is beautiful. You've built a business centered around helping people like me who really need services like Narrative. So I just want to thank you. Thanks so much for being on the show, and please let everyone know where they can find you.
Awesome. Yeah. So our website is www.narrative.so. That's S-O. And I think you're going to share a coupon code, so if you can download a free trial, and the coupon code will give you 15% off Narrative as well. So,
thank you, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to be on here.
Of course. Glad to be here. Thanks for chatting.
And that's it, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Wedding Photo Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget, if you go down to the show notes, you can find a link to narrative.so. You can go get your free trial of the software. You could also use the discount code DelToroPhoto to get 15% off of Narrative. Go check it out. It's great software. I really enjoyed having James on. If you haven't had a chance to look at his work, go check out Chase Wild, and then also go check out Narrative for all your blogging needs. If you guys have any questions about any of it, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram at Wedding Photo Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at DelToroPhoto, and you can also join our Facebook group where we have discussions about different topics. I post articles on things happening in the wedding photography industry, and you can ask questions to me there personally, or if you want something answered on the podcast as well, go check it out. Leave the podcast a 5-star rating, leave me a review. It helps this podcast continue to grow. So thank you everyone for listening to another episode, and we will see you on the next one.